Welcome. I actually had shared recently with Mike Beitler, who is on here, that I miss people. So I'm so happy to see you virtually in this world where we all are. This time has been challenging for those extroverts of us out there who want to see people and talk to people. So I'm thrilled to be on here. I also have the exciting task of talking to you all about professional networking, which is a subject I love. I love networking, but I know that there are lots of people out there who, in the words of my 8th grader, think it is so cringy. It's just a cringy thing to do to network, that it feels uncomfortable and hard, and it can have different meetings for different folks. So I hope that this conversation will give you some really practical tips to do that in a virtual setting. I also want it to be conversational, so I'll throw it out here and give it 10 seconds, but if there's anybody that wants to jump on, I know I said put it in the chat, anybody want to jump on and give us your initial thoughts about networking and any challenges you might be having in a virtual world? I'd love to hear that. Anybody? Okay.
Hey, Bramley.
Hey, Zach.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm still trying to get this to run on my computer, so I actually joined from my cell phone, so it's a little awkward. But anyway, I was going to say, virtually networking, the challenge that I've had is, how do you set that up? How do you reach out to people? How do you facilitate those? Obviously, it's a lot easier to say, hey, let's go get coffee, let's go get breakfast, let's go grab lunch. So trying to set something up virtually and get a connection that way has been a challenge. And obviously, doing it via video can be awkward. So those have been the biggest challenges that I've faced. Even, in my professional environment, setting that up at Lincoln, just networking with people, even internally, trying to gain some different exposure is how do you facilitate that virtually? And then what does that look like? Because obviously it's a different relational connection than it was before.
Great. So I will hope to address some of that, and then we'll see if we can come up with some good ideas. But thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm on my cell phone and I'm driving right now, so
Well, please share.
I think this is Candace.
Hi, Candace.
And, the only issue I had was, like, when you send a message out to people, sometimes it takes them forever to respond back, and sometimes they don't respond at all. So yeah, that's the only problem I have.
Okay, I will address that as well. And I really appreciate your participating. And then I'll kind of go through my next 2 slides. Thank you, you all. If I could see you, I would give you a present for doing that. But like we said, virtual is totally different. Let's talk about it because, like I said, it's something I really enjoy doing. But I think the reason that I enjoy doing it is I look at it, and I have been working for a very long time. I currently work in the Bryan School in Corporate Relations, but prior to that, I worked in talent acquisition and development in private industry for just a few years. And it took me a while to learn these things. But what I finally realized about networking is it used to feel like, oh, we're just exchanging cards, exchanging contact information. But I really like this definition that I have here on the screen. And it says that networking is really about establishing mutually beneficial relationships. So I found that going into it with the mindset of this is not just for me to get contact information or get something for me, but can I make this mutually beneficial? It tends to make it a lot easier, and it tends to be much easier to connect with folks with that, if I go into it with that thought. These are some really practical tips about how to change that and do it online. Because like Zach, I like to talk to people, and we all know that this communication can be awkward. But when we look at doing this, I want us all to think about these things, that it's really important to be authentic. So when you go out, even in an online setting, are the things you're presenting, are you authentic? Do you know what you're trying to achieve through your networking, right? Do you understand what the purpose of your networking is? And could you share that with somebody if they asked you? So I think sometimes we get nervous, and I notice this particularly with students, to just say out loud, I'm a student, I just graduated. It is a different world circumstance than any of us have ever seen before. I'd really like to connect to get your thoughts on what I could be doing on better in my job search. Be very authentic in what you're asking. So keep that in mind. Be who you are, acknowledge the situation like Zach just acknowledged. This is awkward doing this virtually. Don't be afraid to say that. Just say, you know, I feel awkward doing this, but I feel like it's really important. So authenticity is a big part of it. The second part is to be intentional. And I think this, you know, it sounds like it's really simple, but have you sat down and made a list of who you want to connect with? Have you started looking to see the types of folks that you want to connect with? I want to connect with 10 other Bryan School alums in the next 2 months, or I want to, but that's really important of knowing your intention for the networking. I'm going to go on this industry trade group Zoom call with the hope of meeting 2 people that live in California because I need to connect in California. I think setting that intention up front and being clear about that as you move forward is really important. The other thing is, and circling back to what I said before about being mutually beneficial, be helpful, be responsive, be the person that somebody could reach out to and say, I know you're not in the job market, but you may have people you know who have been furloughed. Could you point me their direction? You know, that's helping 2 people at once. You're helping a company who's looking to hire someone, and then you're looking, you know, to help somebody who may be in the job market. But those things are really important as well because it makes you an active participant in the networking. So if you can be helpful and responsive, that adds real benefit to both of the people who are in that networking relationship. So those are things. Does anybody have questions about that and examples, you know, some language? I can provide language if people are looking for that. Anybody have any questions before we go to the next slide? So those are all important in person, but they're even more important when you're in a virtual world because that's how people are getting to know you. So all of those things help with that. So on the next slide, we're going to walk through some things that are really practical tips to be thinking about. And I think that these are things, I will share these slides with you. This is a list of things that literally is a practical guide to things you can be doing. But one of the top things in a virtual world is that's the only way people may not have ever seen you in person or know you in person or talk to anyone you know, but you can still connect. But that makes it even more important to have a professional presence online. And a lot of people don't think about this before they start networking, but this is an extremely practical tip. I would encourage everybody to do it today if they haven't. But when is the last time you Googled yourself to see what comes up in a search? Because in a virtual world, many of us, our first response is somebody reaches out and you say, oh, wait a minute, let me Google them and see what I can find. Just make sure that the search results reflect what you want to, reflect your professional image, that they're reflecting the brand that you want to present to people in the external virtual world. And if there's anything in your search that doesn't reflect that, you know, go ahead and address it. Change the privacy settings on social media, do different, whatever you might like to do to update that so it reflects, you know, your professional image that you want to see out in the world. Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody, show of hands, anybody Googled themselves recently? Thank you, Megan. Thank you, that's good. It's important to do and it's not something we normally think about. The next thing I'm going to talk about is effectively using LinkedIn. So we all know that LinkedIn is the business networking sort of place where we all go to find different things, but it's also a tool, and it's a really important tool. And here are several tips that I want to make sure that you're doing. And they, again, seem very simple and practical, but sometimes those are the things people skip over when they are, you know, moving fast or just not really thinking about what is being presented to folks in a virtual environment. The first thing I want to add is just make sure your profile is complete and reflects your current status. So particularly if you're in a job search, it's really important to have that status reflected in your profile. And again, that comes with the whole thing of being authentic. If you are in a situation where you're actively looking, or you've been furloughed, or you're a new grad, make sure that's right up top for everybody to see, because then you may come to the top of mind when they're looking for connections to fill jobs. The other thing is, do you have a professional picture? This is really important because I did a presentation on LinkedIn recently, and I didn't grab the number to show you all, but it's a large percentage of profiles with a professional picture get greater interaction from external partners. So having that picture and giving people the ability to feel like they know you a little bit better makes a big difference. So please make sure that you have a professional picture. It doesn't have to be a professional headshot, but it's one how you want your image to be presented again in a virtual world when people aren't meeting you in person. The next one is, do you have a custom descriptive tagline and personal URL? The reason you can modify your URL on LinkedIn, and you can also include that on your resume. So that's something that we see more and more that recruiters are looking. They're going to look at your LinkedIn profile, whether it's on there or not. If you can make it easy for them to find, and then you have a really descriptive tagline describing what you're trying to do, what your current situation is. If your graduation is upcoming, next December, make sure that's on there. If you're looking to move to California, make sure that's on there. Any information that you want to control and share with others, make sure you have it in your tagline. The other thing, the next thing I would ask you to do is get involved with groups. You don't have to be on the administrative board of any of those groups or that sort of thing, but get out there and put yourself in the groups that are important to you. So that might be, and I'm going to do this for Maddie, but definitely become part of the Alumni Association, be active in your school alumni, whether it's at the Bryan School, UNCG as a whole, or other universities. Those groups are amazing as far as the connections that you can make. Those folks are often the people who are easiest to talk to. They're a good place to start your networking. So get in those groups, and it'll give you something to, when you send them an email, you'll say, I see that we're in the same group. I graduated from the Bryan School this year. Can we connect for this reason? It makes a big difference, and it gives you another reason to chat with folks. The next thing I would encourage you to do is there are influencers, LinkedIn influencers. Many of you may follow folks already, but they're people who study themes that you're interested in or work for organizations that you follow. One of those right now is there's currently a LinkedIn Get Hired group, and they're maintaining a lot of current information on businesses that are actively hiring, industry silos that are actively hiring. Folks go on there and talk about that. So, those influencers are updated regularly and give really important information that you can find easily. The sixth thing, are you actively commenting or creating content? Are you putting things out there that give people an additional way to know a little bit about you? Can somebody read an article that you wrote and say, oh my gosh, how insightful, that really helps me know them better in a virtual world? And lastly, when you're connecting through InMail, we all have that message. You can just say, let's connect, or whatever it says, I forget. But it makes a big difference if you include some personal information in that message. If you can customize it, if you can include, again, the intention of what you're trying to do, what you would like the outcomes, and then also how you might be helpful to that person. I'd love to talk to you about your career experience. I'm a new graduate. I was highly active in the Information Systems Society, and I'd love to make an introduction for you there if that might help you as well. Whatever, try to find out if you can help them, and those messages being customized can really help. So overall, that's a lot of things that you may already be doing, but there may be one or two that you've skipped over. Are there any questions around specifically LinkedIn? I saw a question in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to read it, but are there questions about LinkedIn and what should be out there and how you might optimize it?
The question in chat probably relates to LinkedIn, and that is, how do I present my strengths and achievements without bragging?
That is, I'm really going to go back even just to where Megan was talking about. That's where quantifiable information is really important. Whether it's a number of projects that you worked on, if it's a recommendation, that's the other thing. If you can get a team recommendation, that's not you saying it, but you feel comfortable putting a personal recommendation out there, that can make it a lot easier to kind of do your personal bragging, and you don't have to write it. It's somebody that you've worked with or somebody that agrees that that work was outstanding. Any other questions about LinkedIn?
Thanks, Bramley. All right, Bramley and Megan, thank you for those awesome tips. Those were
Oh, wait,
great.
I have one more. Sorry.
Oh, you're not done? Okay, I'm sorry.
One last thing. That was about LinkedIn, and then I'll be quiet. I'll get out of the way and let Ashlee and Zach do their amazing work. Just because I think this is important, and sometimes we get caught up, especially talking about virtual networking, and think that LinkedIn is perhaps the one and only place we need to be. I would encourage you to go outside, particularly if you're in a job search or you're looking to build your network community. Go outside of LinkedIn and take a look at professional and community organizations. For those folks who are in a technical field, there are user groups. If you're looking to be in a technical field, those technology user groups are really important. They're usually, you can find them on Meetup or different places like that. Often they have student membership rates. So if it's a trade organization, like the North Carolina Treasury Management Association, they sponsor students. There's a Human Resource Management Association of Greensboro, they sponsor students. And then you can also join, as an individual member. So those are really great places to connect. You can do all of that online, as well as look at local chambers, Rotary, service, community organizations. All of those are places that may be doing things online that have never done it before. And if you take part in those, it can expand your network. And then the other thing I would share in beyond LinkedIn is there are other digital platforms that are important just to go out there and take a look. I listed a few of them here, but even on platforms that probably traditionally have not been networking platforms, Instagram, that sort of place, they're becoming more of that because that's the outreach that we have today. And you can find lots of information out there. You can, comment and follow different folks to get connected, but these are a few of those. So I'd encourage you just to not only maximize your presence on LinkedIn, but take a look at some things that exist kind of in the virtual world outside of that platform. And that's it. Now I'll be quiet unless there are any questions.
Thanks, Bramley. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box. We'll try to get to all of them, at least by the end. And if not, we will answer them in the follow-up email. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Ashlee. Thank you, Bramley and Megan, that was awesome.
Hey y'all, I'll give a quick introduction first and then I'll kind of dig in. So my name is Ashlee Wagner. I work for a company called Charles Aris downtown. We're an executive recruiting firm, which is a fancy way, in my opinion, of saying that we're kind of matchmakers for typically, Fortune 500 companies, and specifically we have a really strong niche with private equity and private equity portfolio companies to attract the very best talent in the world on behalf of their executive level, typically more mid to upper management level positions. So we've been headquartered in downtown Greensboro forever, I guess since the last 15 years since we started, and we're proud to be in Greensboro. Of course, I'm a UNCG alum. 2011 undergrad, serve on the Alumni Association board for the Bryan School, which has been a great way just to get back in touch. So one thing I'll just mention briefly before I kind of dig in and share some thoughts. Candace, you asked a question earlier about not getting responses on LinkedIn. At Charles Aris, we have a term that we like to use called polite persistence. That is how we work to get our hiring authorities and potential candidates that we're looking to attract to the roles that we're working on the phone. We're big believers in meaningful conversations, and that, you really have to engage with people, which I recognize is harder to do right now, especially with COVID. That you have to engage with people and start conversations. And so, Candace, my biggest piece of advice to you is just, as Bramley mentioned, make those messages personalized and follow up. Be politely persistent to get the people that are going to help you get to where you want to go in your career on the phone to start those conversations. So just one, again, thing I wanted to mention before I kind of dig in. So the topics I wanted to spend time on today is some interview best practices, just in general, as well as specific to COVID, as well as potentially onboarding best practices. I might send Maddie some additional resources just to share with everybody after the fact that might be more helpful than digging into them on this call. But we at Charles Aris, you know, as a executive recruiting firm, have found that historically we've been one of the indicators of the economy in terms of what we're seeing usually kind of tracks with what the broader economy is seeing. So I will say I recognize that, you know, we do recruit at a level that again is mid to upper management, which clearly is in a bit of a less impacted state under the current circumstances, you know, for folks who are more frontline, sales, face-to-face roles, even, you know, retail, that's just a little bit less of what we recruit for. But, you know, I'll share some data because I'm all about facts and data. We started tracking this as of March 9th. That was our first work from home day at Charles Aris. On that day, we were working on 119 active searches as an organization. And we saw about 8 weeks of a steady decline in our volume of search count. It hit about a high point of net negative 20% of our searches. So 100% we felt an impact, right? But we were bracing for 08 impact in terms of what we saw then. And that was not what we felt thus far. I will say we've actually had a lot of new clients come to us and say, because of COVID, it's actually even more critical that we get hiring perfect. You know, people are our biggest asset, and you know, we need to push forward, assuming they can, recognizing, of course, there 100% are a lot of companies in Greensboro and in the world right now who are on hiring freezes. But, you know, we've seen a bit of a cautiously optimistic attitude from both a lot of the candidates that we're working with in the marketplace as well as clients. And that, I think we felt the peak again at that 8-week mark. And then the last about 4 or 5 weeks have been more neutral. We've had a few weeks that were positive, a few weeks that were negative, again, in terms of volume of searches that we're working on. And when I say search, I should say, what that means at Charles Aris is that's a specific position that we're looking to fill for one of our clients. So for example, like a vice president of marketing at PepsiCo in their, you know, headquarters, right? So I share that just to give you a little bit of hopefully confidence that it's possible right now to go out, and as long as you're willing to, you know, do the work and kind of take some of these tips. I think specifically for me, if I think back on my Bryan School experience, you know, there were a ton of resources that were given to me, some of which I took advantage of, some of which I didn't. My advice to you is just continue to take advantage of these resources and start conversations from this that hopefully will help you get you a little bit closer to where you want to be. But again, I mentioned all of that just to hopefully give you a little bit of hope that there definitely are companies out there as much as they can moving forward right now with hiring. So on the interview front, some facts and data there. For the active searches that we're working on right now, about a month into COVID, about 50% of our clients had said, we're transitioning everything to a virtual only interview process. We believe we're gonna be able to get comfortable with that. And Zach, I think you're gonna talk a little bit more about some specifics of what y'all are doing on that front. But we've seen a lot of creativity, both with companies hiring as well as, you know, individuals interviewing in terms of ways you can, you know, get comfortable with making a decision in this current environment. The other 50% of our clients said, you know, yeah, we're just going to wait this out, right? We'll see. Yeah, we'll do video interviews for now, but it's clearly not ideal. So we're just going to wait until we can get back in the office. You know, we at Charles Aris announced last week that we won't be going back into the office until September at the very earliest. And I think a lot of other companies have announced, you know, some are saying September, some are even saying 2021. So the great thing is right now, even you guys are familiarizing yourself with different video tools that will help you as you're going through any kind of job search process. So I'd encourage you again to, you know, continue doing that. But I think we've seen over the last few weeks as well as, you know, again, we're just spending all of our time on video all day long. A lot of companies are starting to say, we can't wait. again, assuming they're not on a hiring freeze or whatnot, we've seen a lot of companies just say, how can we get creative to move forward? And so, again, I'll share some of these tips with Maddie so she can share after the fact. But, you know, we have a guide at Charles Aris that we have built. Let me see. Okay, I don't think I can share my screen. That's all around just best practices for interviews. We also built a guide specific for video interviews right now, and how you can, what some of the basic things you should be thinking about are in terms of like, make sure that you're looking at the camera, right? For me, I like to put, this might sound weird, I've heard that there's like this Zoom fatigue thing where you see your face all day long. You're naturally going to look at your face, right, when you're talking. At least that's what I do. And so for me, I make sure that my face is positioned right under my camera. Sorry, y'all. It looks like I'm looking at all of y'all. I'm not. But in an interview, it might sound weird that eye contact matters, but it does, right? And so having a professional environment for me, you can tell I love art, and I have a lot of just really fun, festive art in my house that honestly, a little bit of makes me happy throughout the day. But it's a great talking point as I'm interviewing folks all throughout the day. So there's a lot of just like tactical tools that you can do from a video standpoint to make sure that you're as buttoned up and as professional and putting the, you know, putting your best foot forward. I agree with all of the tips that already have been shared. You know, I'm a big believer from a resume standpoint, but also in conversations to talk about results. We always say, you know, words tell, but numbers sell. I think that quantifiable aspect, both in terms of putting it down on paper, but also when you're talking to folks, really matters. And then one other thing that I'll mention, just hitting back on, I can't recall who mentioned this in the chat, but there was a question around how do you speak to your strengths and development areas? My honest advice is just do it with humility, right? Just say what it is, as long as you're not, I mean, you probably know yourself enough to know if you've got like the edge of, you know, kind of cockiness or not. And if you just come at it with, hey, this is something that people have shared with me. Here's what I've done to work on it. Here's, you know, other things I'm constantly working on right now. We're big believers in, our firm is very, very feedback heavy. So it's easy to know what that is. If you're not getting feedback, seek it, you know, be proactive and share that with individuals. Because I think, you know, especially right now, we have a little bit more time on our hands. You know, finding ways to work on yourself is important, outside of even the professional lens, right? So I know I'm probably over my time already. Maddie's going to hate me, but again, I'll share some additional resources that we share at Charles Aris with a lot of our candidates. And if anyone has any questions, of course, you know, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you so much, Ashlee. I'll be including people's contact information in the follow-up email as well. I'm sure folks here would be willing to chime in. All right, so if you've got questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them at the end, but I'm going to turn it over to Zach now. Zach, take it away.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I am Zach Yarbrough. I am an alum. I graduated in 2014 from the Bryan School. I'm currently working at Lincoln Financial Group. I feel like I've lost 3 months. I guess 4 months ago, I hit my 3-year anniversary at Lincoln. It's been a great journey there, great experience. I've really enjoyed all the opportunities and the people that I've gotten to meet and the connections I've gotten to have in the community alone from having that connection. So obviously I'm excited to join this call. This is the second virtual kind of chat that I've done since being in quarantine. I did one with Synergy, which I'm going to talk about that too, kind of virtual networking. I did a chat via Facebook Live on that, which was really interesting and fun. Ashlee, I will say I'm glad. Bramley and Megan made me nervous when they first started and had their slide decks up. I thought, oh no, I did not make a slide deck or a PowerPoint page for this. So I was glad that you didn't. I'm following suit there. So I just want to take this time, obviously, I'll do some follow-up points on a lot of the stuff that's already been presented. A lot of great points. I took a lot of great notes and some takeaways from that. I think one of my favorite things so far was polite persistence, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we move forward too. But really the two things that I want to hit on are just proactive relationship management and then networking in a virtual environment, and how do you do that and what is it. So actually I'm going to kind of role reverse and flip the way that I was going to go. We're going to start with the virtual networking piece. Two things. One, I want to start off with the persistence piece, the polite persistence piece. Just from a recruiter's perspective, this is the thing that I battle the most. It's a double-edged sword. Actually, before I go forward, can you guys hear me okay? I see a bunch of you leaning in. I don't know if my connection is bad. Okay, cool. Just checking. But from a recruiter's perspective, this is the double-edged sword, right? So there are multiple people reaching out to you at once, trying to get the connections and build them up. And honestly, just to tell the truth, some of those people slip through the cracks and you don't get responses back and you don't see them. That's the importance of the polite persistence of, if you didn't get a response and you haven't gotten a connection, it's okay to reach back out again and say, hey, I know that X, Y, and Z happened. You know, I'd love to connect. I'd love to reach out to you, because there are multiple internal commitments and internal projects at an organization, and who knows what the workload is like. So if you don't get a response immediately, don't take it personally. It's nothing against you. It's nothing, you know, the recruiter's not intentionally ignoring you. Again, that's where polite persistence is going to come in. Another thing that I would say, kind of operating in a virtual environment, is, I mentioned this in my Synergy chat as well, get comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? So even in the Zoom call, I do video calls all day, every day with my team members across the country. And for some reason, when I logged on to do the Zoom call, I thought this was going to just fire right up. It kept telling me that I had an invalid email address. I don't know why it said that. I don't know what happened, but so obviously I was 10 minutes late to the call. I called Maddie and was like, hey, this is what's happening, just so you know, which obviously for me, that's very uncomfortable. I don't like to be late. I didn't want to be the one to, you know, I'm a presenter and I logged on 10 minutes late. But you just have to be okay with that. You have to kick in your critical thinking. You have to figure out your problem solving. So in the interim, I dialed in on my phone. I was able to listen to the first couple of minutes of the presentation. In the background, I had my MacBook going, and then I was trying to figure out how to get it going on my work computer too. Ultimately, Internet Explorer did not work with Zoom, but Google Chrome did. So that was my solution. So I was able to get in on my laptop, and that was nice. So obviously that's really uncomfortable, right? It's not easy. It was embarrassing. You feel like you're missing stuff, but it's okay. You have to work through it. You have to process through it. And I think everyone is understanding of, it's different and it's not the norm. So you just have to be okay with it and work through it. So that'd be my first thing. Kind of feeding off of the being comfortable with the uncomfortable. At Lincoln, obviously the entire process of how we're managing the recruitment process right now is all virtual. So we are doing virtual live chats once a week. So if you're interested in Lincoln, or just, again, if you're looking at networking and getting involved with an organization, if Lincoln is on your target list of companies that you'd like to work in or work for.
Zach, can you just real quick tell us a short bit about Lincoln Financials in case it's not on their radar?
Yeah, that's great. Good call. So we're a Fortune 500 organization, financial services company. And we primarily focus within 4 major business divisions. We have life insurance, group protection or group benefits, employee benefits basically, retirement plan services, and then annuity solutions. We're headquartered, our corporate office is in Radnor, Pennsylvania, which is about 30 minutes northwest of Philadelphia. We have locations in 12 key site areas across the country. So most of those are on the East Coast. So from Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, pretty much all the way down to Atlanta, we have offices. We have a location in Phoenix, Arizona, Omaha, Nebraska, and Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, you know, there are opportunities across the country, really, you know, to work in multiple facets. So a lot of people assume immediately you have to have insurance experience or you have to have accounting and finance experience because it's a financial services company, but obviously the operations backing up behind that between marketing, sales, IT is huge, especially in Greensboro. That's primarily, our IT hub sits in Greensboro. So all of the operational things that keep the train moving forward. We're not just interested in finance, accounting, and sales. So keep that in mind. But what we're doing right now, obviously, is we're doing virtual chats once a week. So even if there's not something that you see posted on the job board right now that you may be interested in, there's still an opportunity, again, for you to do the virtual networking piece that everyone's kind of hit on so far. Really, it's just a chance for you to jump on. We use a tool called Brazen. It allows you to do 10-minute chats. So it's really structured. It facilitates it really well. So you're not chatting with one person for an hour or so on. It sets it up where it's a 10-minute chat. And then after that, it cuts the chat off and you move on to the next person. But it's just a chance for you to join, say what you're interested in, build a connection with me. Generally, what we do is we add people on LinkedIn after that. And that's like you've come through the door. We've done a 10-minute chat. I know Maddie. I know what Maddie's interested in. I've seen Maddie's resume. I know what she'd like to consider in the future. And we've added each other on LinkedIn. So if nothing else, it's just a good networking opportunity and for you to get your foot in the door with someone internal. So those are great. So what I would recommend is if you have a list of target companies, which I'd recommend you do if you don't have that already, look at those and research those companies and look at their events page or connect with a recruiter on their LinkedIn and take a look and see if they do anything virtually or any virtual networking events, and just monitor those and start getting engaged. Video interviewing, okay, that's something that's new for a lot of people and also can be extremely awkward, but if done well is really successful. So we use a tool at Lincoln called Montage or Modern Hire. It's kind of a multifaceted tool. So if you're applying for a new opportunity and there's a large number of people doing it, what we'll do is we'll send you a video link. If you check the boxes in your resume, ticks all the boxes, and we think, hey, this person has potential, we'll send you a link. And basically there are 7 questions related to the job, 5 to 7 questions related to the job. And basically what you do is you do a video interview with yourself. There's no one on there. You look at the questions, it'll read it off to you. You record a response, send it back to us, and then we review those. Lots of people think that's really awkward, but it really gives you a chance to see through the black and white of the resume. So the resume may hit 9 out of the 10 boxes, and you think, well, this resume is better, but this person has potential. You send them the video link, and then, having the opportunity to hear them and add some color to their resume, answering some of those questions. I've seen people have a resume that wasn't that strong, do a video interview and answer those questions and hit it out of the park. And you think, man, I'm so glad that they did this and we can continue talking. And I've seen vice versa, where a resume is really strong and you think this is the person, and they do a video interview and can't add color or can't really give you the feedback that you're looking for on those questions. That, it may be a little too fluffed up. So those have been great opportunities. So again, that can be really uncomfortable for people. But again, you just have to get comfortable in an uncomfortable environment and kind of adapt and be flexible with that. Ashlee's points too, we also use Modern Hire for that's how we're facilitating face-to-face interviews right now. So Modern Hire does where you can answer the questions and record the responses, but it also does the facilitation where you can do one-on-one or panel interviews through that tool. So those can be really uncomfortable as well. So again, managing your environment, like Ashlee mentioned, typically if I were here and doing an interview, I'd probably turn that fan off because I keep looking at it. I'm sure it's distracting for other people. So, make sure you're managing your environment. Lighting is actually really important. I came downstairs to do this because my office upstairs, I'm right in front of a window, so I'm either completely lighted out or it's the background is bad. So I come downstairs to do a lot of these if it's, someone not on my team. If it's a team call, I'm sitting upstairs because it's just my team. But if I'm doing something like this, I'm going to get a little better of environment. So make sure you monitor and manage that stuff too. And let's see. Okay. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and switch over, just looking at the time, proactive relationship management. couple things I want to hit on there. I mentioned the networking events through Brazen, or looking at those companies and trying to see what's going on and getting engaged with those. Get involved with professional networks in Greensboro, Synergy, Young Professionals, whatever it may be. That's the first one that comes to my head. But get involved with those, because again, a face-to-face network, and that's actually how I got involved with this. Mary Lisa connected me because of some of the things that I've done with Synergy, so she recommended me to help participate with this, which was really nice. So even from my previous networking event, this is how I got invited to do this, which is really nice. So utilize those community networks as well. Bramley mentioned, a lot of the resources, and Megan mentioned a lot of the resources that the school will offer, whether it be for job search, resume review, even interview prep. I don't know if that's an option there too, but just find someone that you can. I always recommend do a fake interview with someone before you do a real interview, because sometimes if you say something, it's the first time you're hearing yourself say it, it can kind of tumble out and may not be exactly how you want to communicate it. So practice those answers, practice those responses, find someone that you can do that with, and again, tap into your network to do that, right? Give someone that can give you the feedback, give you the responses you're looking for, and give you some constructive feedback all at the same time. Oh, and the job tool, I want to reiterate that, Megan, that was really cool. I think that's a great space in a virtual environment that you can go and have everything consolidated in one space. So utilize the tools that you're given. And again, if anybody on this call, I'm sure would open up, but I think, Madeleine, you're going to share our contact information, but if there are any questions, or again, figure out how to leverage a network, I'm happy to connect and join you all's network.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, I know we're approaching 1 o'clock. Some people might need to pop off, but we're going to go to a question, and we're going to answer any other questions that come up while I'm speaking. Don't forget, we have another Bryan School break room on June 17th called Recession Roundtable. So anybody that graduated during a time of recession, there's lots of people out there doing that, or that have done it. So please join us for that. It's going to be very conversational. We won't have any specific speakers. So one question that I do want to get to is from, is it Javon? Thank you for coming. She had a great question, which is, we're proceeding with other candidate responses. We've all gotten those likely. This is directed to Ashlee and or Zach. How would you suggest following up with someone who has given you a thanks but no thanks to keep the door open for future opportunities?
I can go, and then Ashlee, obviously, if you I'm into. But what I'd say is don't let that crush you, right? It's going to happen. You're going to get those responses, but again, be persistent. So if you have a targeted search and you have specific opportunities that you're looking for, that's always something that I say too. You can apply for 15 jobs at Lincoln and they may all be different. And that can also be a red flag for a recruiter internally. If you're applying for marketing, accounting, legal, it's like, okay, well, what does this person want to do? Make sure you're targeted in your searches and get the right opportunity, not just an opportunity. So if you get that response of, hey, we're proceeding with someone else, don't let that discourage you. That doesn't mean you aren't eligible or can't have an opportunity like that. Be persistent and keep applying and keep looking at different things. And again, you leverage your network and figure out what you can do. If there are blind spots on your resume or with whatever it may be, just leverage other people in your network to help you look at that.
Yep, and the only thing I would add to that is know that those messages likely are coming from an automated system. So my advice would be anytime you interview with someone, get their contact information. Always send a thank you note, and a genuine thank you note. It doesn't have to be handwritten or whatnot, but sending an email reflecting on something that you guys talked about, that allows you to have the open door communication in case you do get that generic response to say, hey, thank you so much for letting me know that I won't be moving forward in the process. As I shared, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. Please let me know if I can be a resource for you and or if any other opportunities pop up in the future. If you have any feedback on things I should be thinking about in terms of future interviews, please let me know, right? I think sometimes as Zach mentioned, it's easy to be hurt by those messages. There are actually algorithms when you apply to jobs that naturally will just kick people out if there's not certain words on your resume. I know that sounds crazy, but some people get like thousands of applications on certain postings. So it truly is not personal, and trying to find a way to make it more personal in terms of making those connections, I think is important.
Great response. Thank you both. All right, we had another question come in. This is a good one. It's basically saying some examples of verbiage for LinkedIn connections. At Bramley, I think you mentioned something along those lines. We can include that in the follow-up email. Bramley, Megan, Ashlee, and Zach and I can touch base on maybe what some of those responses might be. All right, so we're gonna wrap up with this final question, and just remember the follow-up email will be very important. We'll have lots of tips in there, contact information for our speakers, as well as a survey to see how we did on this Bryan School Breakroom session. We'd love to hear your feedback so we can improve. Okay, so this question is for, sounds like Ashlee and Zach. Do you prefer someone that has a career path or someone that has a variety of experiences?
I'll maybe take this one first. So the challenge so I guess if I'm speaking about Charles Aris, we hire folks with all different types of backgrounds. We have some recruiters who came from, we have one who's an opera singer or was an opera singer. We have one who was a football player, one who was a football coach. We actually hire more for both cultural fit and like communication skills and some of the softer skills rather than like hard experience. From our client standpoint of what they're typically looking to hire for, it really, really just depends. Typically at kind of the mid to upper level management level, you're going to need to have some level of experience. But I guess the only thing I'll mention there, kind of going back to the earlier comment, is I found, in any hiring decision, if you use it as like 100%, typically 60% is technical in terms of what do you know or what experience do you have that's going to get you this job. 40% is cultural fit. Or again, some of those softer skills that a company is looking for as you grow throughout your career, that actually we found flips. And I think just in general, I found that flipping even at the most junior levels of an organization, where if you're the wrong cultural fit, you can have a perfect resume, you can have perfect experience, sorry, you're probably not getting the job, right? Because I think companies are really looking to find ways to just continue to hone their culture. So I would say it all just depends on what career path you're going down as to, and what position you're applying for as to like what are their have to haves from the company standpoint versus the nice to haves. I know that's a cop-out answer, so sorry.
Zach, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I'd say I could look at this in two different routes, right? So if you obviously are looking for career progression and a more complex depth of responsibility and leadership in a specific area, obviously a career path is going to be important, right? So if you're looking to have advanced experience and in a specific area within finance, you're going to need that foundational experience to build off on to get into that. But if you're looking to gain some more experience and you have a lot of different experiences in a lot of different areas, that doesn't mean you're not a fit or won't be able to join the organization, but it may not be at the same level that you're looking for, right? So you may have a little experience in a marketing space and finance and sales and whatever it may be, or management. But if you're looking to get into, a marketing or a finance space and you have some experience with that, you may be starting at a lower level or more junior level to build that foundational knowledge to build up on. So it doesn't mean that you can't get the job or won't be a fit or build into it, but most likely you're going to need the career progression and career trajectory to get to a higher level, more senior level role than a lot of different experiences in one space, unless all those different experiences play into, maybe in a project management role, you've done something here, you've done a project here, you've done a project there, you've done a project there in a lot of different spaces, but that still is kind of, I guess, that's counterintuitive because that's still kind of a career trajectory into project management. So it's just different. It depends on what the role is. It depends on what experience they're looking for, and it depends on what your career trajectory is individually.
Could I share on top of what Zach, I know we're going to hang up and let people go, but one of the things I share with folks when we talk about it, I call it a cheat. And for those of us in the recruiting world, I'm sharing something, but if you do have a broad background like that, but you know in your mind that you have skills that translate particularly directly to the job description where you're trying to go, use the language of that company's job description when you talk about how you fit that job. So sometimes skills have different language in each different job, but if they say we need somebody who is comfortable following a tight timeline and working with details, use that language and show that recruiter how you've done that in your variety of backgrounds, because that's how they'll best understand that. So you can't expect them to understand a language different than their own. So use the language of their job description and their company, and then explain to them how you've done that. Does that make sense to everybody? But it's kind of, you need to make sure you're connecting directly with them.
Absolutely. That's great, Bramley. I'll just go ahead and throw in a plug for the Bryan School Alumni Association as well. You don't have to join it. You're already a member if you've graduated from the Bryan School. Same goes for the UNCG Alumni Association. So connect there. There's tons of groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you've got target companies that you're interested in working for, reach out to those companies on LinkedIn and see what alumni are working there, and use that polite persistence that we talked about and see if any alum would be willing to help connect you with roles or positions or facts that they, go ahead.
I was going to say, in addition to that, another recruiter tip or trick, if you actually want to see what the Alumni Association looks like at each of those areas. So for example, if you put in quotes in LinkedIn, you could put Lincoln Financial Group in quotes and then type in "and" with all capital letters. And then you could type in UNCG or UNC Greensboro and hit the search. It will pull up anybody that has the match of works at Lincoln Financial Group and went to UNCG in any capacity. It will pull all those people up so you can see those people and connect with them directly.
No premium account required?
No premium account required.
All right. That's a good one.
Yeah.
We should have led with that one.
I should have.
No, it's okay.
Put it in the email.
Yes, I just wrote it down. We'll include that in the email. So yeah, lots to cover in this email. Please look at it, take the survey. I'm also going to be including an opportunity for any students that were on the call today for a Crisco training opportunity. Please share that widely with anyone that you might be trying to help out with jobs as well. I don't think we have any more questions that came through, and we've gone way over time. So I want to thank Megan and Bramley for their awesome tips from the Bryan School perspective, and from their years of experience, as well as Zach. Thank you so much for joining us. Ashlee had to dash. I'm sure she had another Zoom call. She's on them all day long. I'm sure Zach is too. So thank you all so much for being here. It was really nice to see all your faces, and please join us on the 17th for the recession roundtable. Thanks again.